gentlemen, so I'm going to call our meeting to order. And we will start. Are you ready, Becca? Good to go?
Steve, we're good?
You said good to go. Okay, so we'll start with introductions on my left.
Dan Haggerty.
Dave Olson.
Michelle Weil.
Len Erickson.
Claire Touton.
Barbara Matthewson.
Okay, so we'll open our meeting with our supervisor's report from Carrie.
Good evening, Midcoast Community Council members. I'm Carrie Dahlman. I'm here on behalf of Supervisor Don Horsley this evening. I have a few updates to share. There was a question last week at the retreat about district elections and the Midcoast Community Council moving to that format. I checked in and it seems there's been no discussion and there is no movement toward that direction for the Midcoast Community Council. I'll let you know if I hear anything differently. I have an update about the situation with Seton Hospital and Seton Coastside. This week at the Board of Supervisors meeting this past Tuesday, Supervisor David Canepa expressed interest in holding a study session, and it's actually just been scheduled very recently. So there will be a study session about Seton Medical Center and Seton Coastside. It will be on March 4 at 7 p.m. in the Daly City Council chambers. I don't have any flyers yet because it's just very recent scheduling, but there will be a study session. And at this time, the county is also just monitoring the situation. Also on the topic of health, I don't really have an update, but I just want to acknowledge, I know the coronavirus is top of mind for a lot of people all around the globe, and just want to acknowledge that the county is monitoring that situation as well. And the Emergency Operations Center is open and monitoring. One last update about the census regarding post office boxes. So it seems the U.S. Census Bureau is not delivering census invitations to P.O. boxes. Of course, this presents an obstacle for our South Coast and Mid-Coast communities. We want to make sure everyone has the most up-to-date information. So while the U.S. Census Bureau is not delivering to P.O. boxes, they will be delivering to physical addresses. And as of right now, we're still getting more information about the process for determining all physical addresses. And in an effort to ensure a complete count of every community, the county is specially delivering information to P.O. boxes in order to let residents know that you should be expecting mail from the Census Bureau at your physical address. There's also going to be posters posted at the post offices outlining how to get appropriate information online or via phone. Also, the Census Bureau enumerators will be reaching out to owners of group quarters. One example would be farm labor housing, to be able to count those individuals. And we're also working on getting a list of the Census Bureau's identified group quarters so we can be sure it's as complete as possible. Just as a reminder, Census Day is April 1, 2020, and residents should receive invitations before then, and you can start completing the census online or over the phone, also with the census form. So I recommend for any additional information, you also check out San Mateo County's census website. Our Office of Community Affairs is doing a lot of promotional work, and I'll provide any updates as they come in. And yeah, Claire.
I just wanted to also say that there'll be a number of places around where you can access census enumeration. The farmers market will have actually internet access there to do it. The library has access. But I'm concerned if they're going to mail these things to our physical addresses, we're not going to get them. They don't deliver to the physical
Yes,
address.
the post office rejects them to our physical addresses.
They send them back.
We don't have mailboxes there to receive them.
Right.
There's a few that do, there's
Some
certain
people do.
routes,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah.
About 20% of Elk Grove.
Yeah, the majority do not.
So this is great feedback. I will let the Office of Community Affairs know. My understanding is this is a relatively recent update, that they're not delivering to post office boxes through the Census Bureau. So I'll let them know about that challenge and see if they can communicate that back. And just, make sure we can keep the channels open.
Yeah,
Help.
Montera has no delivery at all, and Moss Beach is scattered.
Okay,
They'll have to go door to door, I would think, if
Yeah.
they're going to send these to people's houses.
right.
It seems like a large part of rural America would be skipped that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it helps, it does get confusing a lot, just to be very, the Montera Post Office does not deliver, El Granada Post Office does not deliver. The Half Moon Bay Post Office does deliver if you put your own rural mailbox on a certain route.
Okay,
So I think, I'm not sure if the route actually goes up to
No.
Montera, where there might be a few
No,
in
No.
Montera.
Montera
Nobody
gets
in
So
Montera.
I live in
none,
El
and Moss
Granada,
Beach
and they do
gets
come up
some.
to me, I have to use the 94019.
Moss Beach gets some, but it comes from Half Moon Bay, not from Moss Beach.
If you would want to maybe put the people that are working on this in touch with us, maybe we can give them a little bit of reality and work out a plan together.
sure, I'll do that. And I think another follow-up question is who will be delivering these census packets? And that I'm not sure of.
Is there any kind of a list maintained that a person can access online to see how they're being delivered to?
Not that I know of, but I can follow up on that. And I'll put the council in touch with the Office of Community Affairs as well.
Okay. Yes,
Can I ask a clarifying question?
sure.
How did we deal with this in 2010? Because we also did obviously have a lot of residents who had heater boxes only.
I don't know offhand. Okay, so maybe a similar situation.
So, yeah, if you've, for the March 11th meeting, our next one in March, and that's before the date,
Yes,
touch on it again, but if you could come out with specifics on some of these points, that would be.
sure.
Okay.
Great.
Anything else?
That's all for now.
Anybody have questions for Carrie, Barbara?
Update on our check.
Oh, yes, I gave all the information to the fiscal team,
Right.
so I know they're working on it. I'll double check.
I think we need to write a letter about this. Thank you.
Sure.
What check, I don't know what you mean, what check is that?
We have a stipend that we get every year from the county. We usually get it in December, and we still haven't received it.
And the paperwork has all been submitted from the
Everything was
MCC
done on
already.
time.
Okay, so, wait. Okay, anything
Thank
else?
you.
Larry had some-
No, we're just talking.
Okay, I have something.
Go ahead.
Follow up to the thing that had happened, Bay review on the homeless, possibility of a homeless facility on Caltrans surplus land in Montera. And I know Supervisor Horsley already made comments on that. I doubt there's any new information in the last 2 days, but please keep us up to date on that.
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks,
you.
Carrie. I don't see anyone else here from government officials. So next are public
Lisa's here.
comment.
Lisa.
I'm sorry,
Lisa.
who's it?
I'll step in here. Lisa Ketchum, Planning Commission. Director Monowitz said at our meeting today that Cypress Point would not return to the Planning Commission until April 22nd at the earliest.
Oh, I never set the projector.
Next up are public comments for items not on the agenda. I don't believe I have any speaker slips for that. Do you now, Greg?
Greg Diegas, Montera. I believe today is the last day you are accepting applications for the Midcoast Community Council to fill a vacancy?
No, actually, it remains open.
Okay, I wanted to know if you received any qualified applicants to date.
But to date, we have Carrie.
There are no new applicants.
All right, so in that case, I'll volunteer to serve, but it really should be Harold. Or somebody younger than those of us who are well-seasoned, okay? And I want to say to the community, this is your community. We're kind of well-seasoned, you know? Come on, all right? There needs to be more people like Michelle sitting on this board, okay? So how do I fill out an application? Let me know.
There's a link on the site.
Okay.
Go to it. Thanks, Greg. Anyone else? Okay. Next up is our consent agenda. We have minutes for both the February 12th regular meeting and the February 19th retreat. Do I have a motion for accepting the...
I'll move to approve the minute.
I'll second.
Okay. Comments? All those in favor? Okay. Okay, those minutes are accepted. Okay. The first item on tonight's agenda is an active transportation plan update from the county. And at this point, I'll turn it over to and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Len. Hi, everyone, members of the
Larry, you're
Midcoast
gonna
Community
move your-
Council and members of the public in attendance tonight. My name is Julia Malamo-Laycock, and I work in the Office of Sustainability in the county. And one of the work areas of the Office of Sustainability is active transportation, so walking and biking. I'm joined here, I'll just note, tonight by my colleague Joel Slavitt, and Joel will probably join me up at the front for any questions at the end that you might have. So I think I saw all of you in November. We were here at the November MCC meeting, and we've made a lot of progress since November, but I thought I would just give today a recap of the project work to date, and then where we are now and what's coming next. Dave, could you advance the slide? Thanks. So we've done the welcome and introductions. As I mentioned, it'll be a quick project recap and the work to date. I'll introduce you to the draft recommendations. We're at a really exciting part of the process now. We have some actual recommendations that we can show to you all and show to the community. And then I'll go over the upcoming activities and next steps. So the plan goals for now, we have 4 of them: safety, equity, access, and flexibility. I think likely the first 3 are self-explanatory. We want to make sure that it's safe for those that are walking and biking or who would like to walk and bike in unincorporated areas of the county, that we implement projects in a way that is equitable and that we're considering social equity when we are building these facilities. Who is it that may not have access to other modes of transportation that may need these facilities more than others? Access, are we providing access to key destinations, places that people would like to go? And then flexibility, the 4th plan goal refers to a couple of things. One, sort of making sure that our plan is agile as we move forward, so that it considers, new transportation modes like scooters and other micro-mobility options, and that it also allows us to be flexible when, for example, the city of Half Moon Bay says, okay, we're going to build this project here, and it's going to connect directly with an unincorporated community, so that we can ensure that the plan has a shelf life that makes sense and it's not sort of stagnant. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, when I saw you in November, we kicked the project off in the spring of last year. We're obviously in winter 2020, even though it doesn't feel like it. We anticipate wrapping the planning process up in sort of the late summer or fall of this year. That's our hope. And we are right now in the second phase of outreach, although we've been receiving comments from folks during the entire process. This is our sort of the second big outreach phase that we're in the midst of right now. Thanks. Thanks, Dave. In terms of the work that we have completed so far, as I mentioned the last time we chatted, we conducted an existing conditions analysis, and so we looked at, we did in-person tours of a lot of the unincorporated communities to feel what it was like to walk and bike in these areas. We looked at collision data, so where are collisions occurring that involve pedestrians and cyclists that might result in sort of hotspots that we need to look at to improve safety. We also, in our first phase of outreach, we asked folks about where they would like to see improvements, where they're biking and walking now and where they would like to do so in the future, but maybe the existing conditions are such that they don't feel comfortable doing that now. So I think our first pop-up event was actually at the Half Moon Bay Earth Day Festival last spring, and we did talk to a number of folks from unincorporated, the Midcoast communities there. We also held one of our 2 Phase 1 workshops at the Half Moon Bay Yacht Club, and we got a chance to talk to a lot of folks there about sort of the barriers that they see on the Midcoast in terms of walking and biking. We had online outreach as well. We had an existing conditions web map that was interactive and that it allowed people to comment on the existing facilities, whether they like them, whether they'd like to see improvements, and actually draw lines and put points on the map showing, here are some hot spots that we'd like to see improvements at. We also had a survey. So, sorry, do you mind going back a second, Dave? Sure. Thanks. So in addition to that first phase of outreach, we worked with our project consultant, who is Tool Design Group, to conduct some more technical analysis, which included the gap and the demand analysis, looking at where are there gaps in the network currently, and where might there be latent demand for walking or biking given things like the land use mix, population density, key destinations, that sort of thing. And so all of that work that's been completed to date, really, relying heavily on the input that we received from community members, and then those technical analyses, those have allowed us to come up with our draft recommendations. So these recommendations are really they can be sort of conceptualized in 3 parts. There's the programs and policies. We have the bicycle network recommendations, and we also have the pedestrian recommendations. So the programs and policies, we have thought about those in sort of 4 topic areas, and this is not an exhaustive list of the things that we're thinking about in these topic areas. They're just some examples. A lot of these policies, I'll say a lot of the policies are inward looking in that they, together with other agencies in the county, we said, okay, what is it about the way that we are operating now that could be improved to encourage walking and biking? And so that could be things like, can we have better wayfinding for people that are walking or biking? Might we look at a formalized maintenance process? We got a lot of comments about a lot of the bike facilities, for instance, and pedestrian facilities for that matter as well, could use some more maintenance because debris in the bike lanes, for instance, is making it unsafe or uncomfortable to use those facilities that already exist. And then on the program side, it's really looking at working with community members and community-based organizations to carry out events or programs that look at encouraging walking and biking. So that could be coordinating with our Safe Routes to School friends. Carlene Goldenauer is here, I noticed tonight. So Carlene, we've been in touch with her about Safe Routes to School programs and policies. And so these are, as I said, the 4 sort of topic areas. We will have a longer list of all of these policies and programs when we have the draft plan, and that's when we'll be seeking your feedback on these items. But we absolutely welcome your input when it comes to potential additions that we might make to these topic areas. So moving on to the bicycle network recommendations, this slide shows our bicycle facility design toolbox. And so it's the types of bike facilities that we have at our disposal when we're thinking about adding or improving facilities. And so those range from the top left-hand corner from a bicycle route, which is basically composed of signage and sometimes sharrows, moving on to a bicycle boulevard, which is then a kind of a step up in that it includes traffic calming elements like maybe speed bumps or bulb outs that at crossings that sort of changes to the engineering of a roadways that slow traffic down, which makes it inherently safer for cyclists and pedestrians. Moving on to bike lanes, those include just your kind of standard painted designated bike lane, a buffered bike lane, which includes a painted buffer, a separated bike lane, which has a physical separation element to it that separates cyclists from vehicles. So that could be concrete barriers, it might be planters, it could be plastic flex posts. There's a lot of different options there. And then of course we have a shared use path, which would be, the coastal trail is an example of that. So it's a multi-use path that's completely separate from vehicles. So, yeah, thanks, Dave. Next slide is perfect. This slide, and I think that we saw this in November. It's attempting to show the kind of rationale behind the selection of a facility on any given roadway. And so, if we're looking at the chart on the left-hand side, what it's showing is that as vehicle volumes and speeds increase, so does the need for separation from vehicles if you're on a bike. If you're cycling on Highway 1, a sign isn't necessarily going to be the best, way to the best facility for cyclists given the volume of vehicles and the speed of vehicles. And so that's the chart on the left-hand side. Whereas, I guess as an example in the opposite direction, if you're on a neighborhood street where you don't have too many vehicles traveling there on a daily basis and the speed limit is maybe 25 miles per hour, there's less need for physical separation from vehicles. And the chart on the right is showing that this facility selection can be it's thought about a little bit differently in rural areas where you'll typically have sort of more intrepid cyclists. And so we might think about Highway 84 as an example here. And what happens in rural areas, or I should say what the FHWA, which is where these charts come from, what the Federal Highway Administration, what their best practice shows is that in rural areas, when volumes and speeds increase, you would look to wider shoulders. So that's the facility selection. So in terms of the proposed bicycle network, which you have in a series of maps in front of you, and I'll note that we will have an interactive map that shows the bicycle network and allows folks to comment on each of the facilities, much like we had for the first phase of outreach, but this time it shows the draft recommendations. We're hoping to have that up this week, and so we'll make sure to send you all an email once that's ready, and we're going to be sharing it with the community through social media blasts and newsletters and so on. And so as you consider the draft facilities that are shown on this map, we're asking you to think about whether there are locations that you think should be higher priorities for us to think about when we're implementing some of these projects. What might be missing? What is it that we didn't manage to capture on the network that you'd like to see there? And then are there any gaps in the network that we haven't addressed? And of course, any other things that come to mind as you look through these.
And I'll toss in for the audience and the video audience, all of those maps are on the MCC website.
That's correct.
Would it be possible to just take a moment and go into a little detail of what you're proposing so that we can all understand? I just see dots, there's overlays, it's kind of hard to read.
Yeah.
So what is being proposed?
If you don't mind, Dan, I'll point you to this map here. I think once the interactive map is available, it'll be a lot easier to look at these, and I apologize. The legend is on the first page, but then the Midcoast communities, the zoomed in version is on that second page, and it doesn't enjoy the legend. These are the documents that we printed our posters for, and so we'll have like a much larger poster of this Saturday when we're at the El Granada Post Office, and so they don't print out all that well on, I guess that's legal size paper.
So it looks like, are we talking about, I see the trail continuing from El Granada up to Montera, and all that proposed parallel trail.
Yeah.
Is that what we're talking about?
The parallel.
Something different.
So the parallel trail is just sort of one segment of what's on Highway 1, and that's actually being built next year. Is that right, Carrie? Yeah. Right.
From Rocket Farms to Coronado.
Yeah.
That's what's being built.
Right.
Soon.
And so this plan is laying out a vision for future improvements, and that's one of them because that's in the works, as Carrie said. And so we're proposing that not only would a trail like that be nice on the segment that's going to be built next year, but all along Highway 1, all along the coast. I would say that's like
it's a basic continuation of the
Yeah.
parallel trail.
That's right.
The dotted line.
Yeah.
Along Highway 1, and then Airport Boulevard.
Airport Boulevard. And I apologize. We're dealing with a lot of areas in the county here, so let me just.
That's the dark blue light one.
So, yeah, I have a question about that too,
Yeah.
because it's dark blue there
Yeah.
and it's green on these maps. The area just, the dotted line furthest west.
Oh, yeah, that, I would say, let's not look at what's on the screen there.
Okay, what we have here.
Yeah.
Which would be a
those are the most
shared
recent.
use path proposed for that area. Which would, just so I understand, because we did have a recent fatality on that street.
Yeah, that's right.
So shared use path would mean that would be separated from the roadway completely? Is that right?
I will note that on Airport Boulevard, and this is true for a few other facilities, if you look closely, you'll see that there are two colors. There's both blue, which is the bike lane, and then the green, which is shared use path. And what we mean there, so this is also an element in the Connect the Coast Side plan, and we've been in touch with planning to make sure that our plans are consistent, and with Public Works in terms of evaluating the feasibility at a high level, because we're not actually doing detailed engineering plans here, but at a high level, there are some constraints on Airport Boulevard.
Airport Street, I'm sorry.
Airport Street.
Just didn't want to keep reinforcing the wrong.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Airport Street. And so the idea there is, we would be considering both of these facilities. And so this is a really good example of a situation where it'd be really helpful to have your feedback in terms of what the preference would be for Airport Street.
Well, I think I gave that to you over email, and I
Yes.
can give it to you again right now. I ride that with my husband and daughter frequently. Speed limit, I think, is 45? 35, but cars drive way faster than that. It's super scary having cars drive up behind you going like 50 plus miles an hour when you're sharing the lane with them. We had someone killed on a bicycle there a couple months ago. And I would just strongly advocate to have a safer measure there. There's no alternate path between Moss Beach and Montera and El Granada and further south, other than Highway 1. Huh?
No lights,
No lights, nothing.
Thank you for sharing that.
I have a question. Does that network connect to the city?
Yeah, along Highway 1 it would. And so there's are you aware of the Pedro Point Headlands Trail that they're working on? That would connect to Old Devil's Slide Trail.
I saw it was a Flat Fest in Pacific, there were booths and they try to share plans for the trail going over the seventh slide. Connected. Is that part of this or are you connected?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's something that we are constantly thinking about because, we don't we don't exist in a vacuum, the county, and so making sure that we are in touch with our jurisdictions that surround us to connect facilities, because people, when they're walking and biking, I mean, I don't think about necessarily what town, whether I'm in unincorporated county or Half Moon Bay or Pacifica. It just matters that the connection is there. So I invite you all to keep looking at the draft maps, and as I mentioned, we'll share the interactive maps with you all, the online versions, and we, the more comments that we can get from you all, the better we can make this plan. Did you want to say something, Claire? Okay. In terms of the pedestrian improvements, the approach that is being taken in the plan is a little bit different, because unlike the bike network, we're not going to be mapping out all of the pedestrian facilities that exist in unincorporated county. Part of the reason for that is that we have a limited data set that we're working with. And then, also we think that this approach allows us to really get at some kind of key areas and then use those as examples for future pedestrian improvements. And so the approach that's being taken is that we're developing specific improvements, recommended specific improvements for, I think it's 11 locations now actually, that were identified in the gap analysis and through our revision of input that we've received from community members in terms of areas with access issues and safety issues. And so you all have those specific pedestrian improvements in front of you. And then those specific recommendations are being supplemented by what we're calling pedestrian design guidance for specific areas within the county, because in recognition that what's acceptable and appropriate for folks in, for example, North Fair Oaks, which is a really sort of more urban area, is completely different than what community members want to see in the Midcoast areas. And so I'll mention that in the outreach that we're doing, the types of questions that we're going to be asking folks to inform the development of this design guidance are things like, would you, in terms of sidewalks, would you like to see sidewalks everywhere in your community? Would you like to see them nowhere in your community? Would you like to see them just on key corridors? So leading to schools, leading to markets, leading to key destinations. And so I know that we talked a little bit about that the last time that I was here, and I would appreciate your continued input on that. Another question that we're asking is what types of pedestrian facilities make sense to you in terms of the context and the character of your community. So is it sidewalks that make sense? Is it sort of a gravel path with a vertical barrier, which like a wooden barrier, which in Pescadero there are examples of that? Or is it okay, and I know that this is true in some of the communities here, is it okay on neighborhood streets, for instance, just not to have any type of pedestrian facility and where people walk in the street, and that's acceptable because vehicle speeds are low and vehicle volumes are low? So again, your input on that would be very welcome. Here are the locations of those proposed specific recommendations. And so we've got downtown Montara, the area near the Mavericks House Event Center in Princeton, downtown El Granada, and let me see, yeah, that's the extent of the Midcoast locations. And then further down, we've got Pescadero. The idea was to select these locations, again, based on that gap analysis and based on community input that we heard in that first phase.
So
yeah.
When you talk about the proposed improvements, from a funding standpoint, do you have any funding that goes to support it, or does it remain to the local entity to find funding to support the recommendations?
Well, the county is in part the local entity. So yeah, we would be looking for funding to do these things. And then when it comes to You know, a lot of times, if the Department of Public Works, for example, has plans to resurface a road area, and, you know, we would coordinate some of these improvements with that resurfacing. It just makes sense from an efficiency standpoint. You know, if you're going to be resurfacing a road and you want to include a high visibility crosswalk, it's not that much more expensive to paint some lines on the road. So that's the idea. And then for a lot of those kind of larger ticket items, we will be applying for funding.
So then to take Montero specifically, because you referred to the whole downtown area, does that mean there'll be a specific layout recommended in terms of where there's sidewalk improvements or other things like that for us to comment on?
That's correct. That's one of the packets that you've got, the one on the top there, just underneath your green comment card, I think. Yeah.
Got it.
So those are the pedestrian recommendations. In terms of upcoming activities and next steps, if you could take us to the next slide, please, Dave. We are, as I mentioned, currently engaged in our second phase of community outreach. This Saturday, we will be at the El Granada Post Office from 9:30 until 1 p.m. So we're really excited to bring our draft recommendations to the community this weekend. We also have, and if there are other events that are happening in the community or places you think that we should be going to, please absolutely let us know. We'd love to hear from as many people as we can. We have, since the first two workshops from that first phase were one on the coast and one in North Fair Oaks, and we, you know, with a view to making sure that we hit a lot of areas in the county. This time we're going to be going to the North County, to Garden Village Elementary School in Broadmoor on March 25th, and then to Woodside High School on March 26th. And we've been busy going to community council meetings. We were at the GCSD Parks Advisory Committee on February 3rd. We'll be going to the PMAC in March. We're here tonight, obviously. North Fair Oaks Community Council will actually be going to in March. They had to shift us off of their agenda this month. And then, of course, we've got our webpage, which will host the interactive map and other outreach materials, and we'll be promoting all of this through social media. So what we'll also be doing sort of simultaneously, and once we receive feedback from community members on these draft recommendations, is a project prioritization process. And so the proposed approach for project prioritization is that we will decide on a list of categories that we will be using, and those potential categories are on the right-hand side there. We'll be assigning weights for each of the categories, and we'd love to have your input in terms of which of these categories you think are most important as we look to implementation. And then we'll assess the projects in each of these categories, which will result in a project list that shows us here are the high, medium, and low priority projects. One thing I'll mention here is that we're thinking of splitting the projects up into kind of like the Bayside and the coastside areas, just in recognition of the fact that the context is really different in these locations, and that kind of the priorities might be different as well. Let's see. So we will be making revisions to the draft projects and programs this winter once we receive input from community members and from community councils like yourselves. We will then carry out the project prioritization process. Our consultant will also be working on a financial and implementation strategy section of the plan, which will help us look to funding sources for a lot of these kind of more expensive items and figure out ways that we can partner, you know, with Public Works and so on, so that we can implement some of these projects right away. And then we will be developing a draft plan, at which point we will come back to you all at the risk of coming here far too many times in a year's time period, for feedback on that draft plan to ask, did we get it right? Are there things that we need to change before we take this plan to the Board of Supervisors for adoption, which will hopefully be in the summer, like maybe in the fall of this year.
Good. Okay, well, look, thank you. In going around, first we'll have questions from the council for clarification, and then from the audience. So going on that, would you like to start, Barbara?
Sure. Joel, do you want to come up for questions as well? I'll just invite my colleague Joel up in case he...
Great.
I have a couple of questions about the Montera part of this. Am I correct in assuming you want to put crosswalks at 7th, 8th, and 9th Street going across the highway?
I don't believe it's across the highway. You'll have to forgive me. I don't have it in front of me.
So you're just putting them, because I don't understand, you have two different...
These are, I think very clearly, they're marked as crosswalks on the street itself from one side to the other.
So on one side of 7th
not
to...
going across.
Yeah, paralleling on one.
The point to bring up in conjunction with that, a large hot button on the coast, both Montera and Moss Beach and even El Renata are crossings of Highway 1 itself.
Right.
And here in Montera, since you've marked it out specifically, while you've noted certain sidewalk improvements along Highway 1 on the east side, you've explicitly not put any crosswalks going across Route 1. And is that because you felt they weren't needed, or it was a sensitive topic? We've been going through a process with Caltrans in Moss Beach for just one crosswalk. So I was interested in whether you didn't think they were needed, or whether it was just too hot a topic with respect to Caltrans to go forward.
You have item B here.
Yeah, item B says you're crossing the highway, the way I read it.
It says no marked pedestrian crossings over State Route 1 explicitly in number B.
That's the issue. The recommendation is to incorporate the safety and mobility study, phase 2.
Right, but it doesn't mark them up on here.
Okay, I'll have to take another look at that, and I can get back to you all about that.
Because there's nowhere for anybody to go over there.
Yeah, so I assume if you had recommended a crosswalk, and I assume you would have put it this way.
Well, I would imagine that that's being held off as part of the safety and mobility and Connect the Coast side, whereas this is a complementary project.
That's where the question comes in. So you're just deferring, looking at that to this Connect the Coast side study?
Yeah, we're taking guidance from Connect the Coast side because they have, and I'm trying to recall whether they're proposing a crossing of Highway 1 in this area. They are?
And I think there's 2 in Montera, but I couldn't say that for sure. But I know I just looked at that plan, and there were crosswalks there were several crosswalks along Highway 1.
Right.
So,
I would think if you're going to put a crosswalk in, you'd more do it down by the Tart House, whatever, La Costanera, somewhere down there where people are crossing over to get to the beach, but any other place wouldn't be suitable.
Right, because I don't think there's actually anything on the other side, as somebody pointed out, to cross.
Yeah, there is nothing over there.
Okay, that might just be a confusing language.
There is access
Street
to the reef,
beautiful.
but it's a very low number of people that use it.
This is excellent feedback. So what I'm hearing is a crosswalk here is not desired. It may be, I'm sorry, I can't read the text on there, but it might just be a language, confusingly written, so.
Okay, well, you should look at that, though. Because it does say cross Highway 1.
Okay.
I recall that the updated Connect the Coast side has 14 crosswalks between the tunnel and the Half Moon Bay area. Minus 1 now, which we have already, which is on the
Let's see.
So I think back in the earlier version, they said every half mile there should be crosswalk.
Okay, Barbara, do you have?
And just one last question. You're going to take the driveway away from the gas station that's on 8th Street? Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe that there are 2 entrances to the
one's
gas
on the
station.
highway. Yeah.
So again, that's a proposal. This is, these are very draft, meant for kind of a conversation starter. The consultant's suggestion was that that would improve pedestrian safety in that area. But if it's a non-starter, we'll take the direction from...
Into the gas station, and then back out of the gas station?
No, there's two entrances on 8th Street. One doesn't even go near the pumps. I don't know why it's there. Just check it out.
Okay.
It was still dry.
Understand. Okay, Claire?
Yeah.
Okay. On figure 5, you have downtown El Granada, and it looks like this was constructed without considering the new fire station that's being implemented there. I mean, it's close to finishing construction. They have some frontage sidewalks there, but I think this whole area needs to be re-looked at in light of the station, and also the walkway down to the highway. So I think basically on Coronado, you need to extend that map so it includes Coronado and the schools that are up there. So I would say, take this map and extend it all the way to cover both Wilkinson and El Granada elementary schools.
I will, yeah, I appreciate that point. I will mention that the El Granada School, there's going to be a Safe Routes to School walk audit on March 18th.
Yeah.
So we specifically didn't look at areas where schools have or soon will have Safe Routes to School recommendations so as not to duplicate work, because what will come out of that walk audit, is that right, Carlene, is our specific recommendations that pertain to the school.
I agree, but especially the fire station, it just isn't on the map at all, so.
Okay.
That's all I had. Michelle?
Yeah, just a question on this document. Some of the recommendations are short-term and some are long-term. What's the approximate timeline for short-term versus long-term? Or is it?
You know, I don't have a really great answer to that question. I think that's something sort of to be determined. Joel, do you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like if there's a right-of-way issue, it's more likely to be long-term.
If there's a what?
A right-of-way issue.
Okay.
That would be an example.
No, it details out the specific recommendations and whether they are short-term and long-term, so I'm just trying to look for like approximately as like short-term in the next year and long-term is more like several years. Just curious.
I mean, think of it this way, if you're putting like paint and striping on the street, it's something easier to implement short-term.
Yeah. So it was more based on how hard it is to implement rather than like how much of a priority it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Anything else, Michelle?
No.
Okay, Dave?
Nothing for me.
Dan?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. You mentioned wayfinding. Are you talking about signs?
Yeah. Be like post office this way or.
Yeah, I think we know. I don't think signs are really good use of money. We like the more natural, rural feel of the community.
Okay.
So putting up a bunch of government signs, I don't think. Definitely no plastic dividers.
Okay. Yeah, I think
I think what they did down Half Moon Bay is horrible. I hope that they can somehow do something better. So the basic concept of this plan is to just make it easier for people to move around in our community. Right? So the real need is on the highway. I think I've said it a number of times that grade separation crossings. And I think the community, the areas where there's no sidewalks, I think the community in general is gonna like to keep it that rural feel. So there will need to be a really strong argument for sidewalks. I will say one thing, and the gravel trails with the wooden, I think that's a much better idea. For example, here at the downtown El Granada, I think they should have some type of a trail through the median instead of having a concrete sidewalk. It just doesn't, I don't think it would look appropriate. Yeah. And then for any concrete work, I'm an advocate for having colored concrete, have it, a little bit, not the stark white, uncolored, just that when concrete dries, it dries almost, really white. It's blinding. It stains easy.
Yeah.
It just looks unnatural. So when they color it with more of a natural tone, beige or whatever. This whole Avenue Alhambra is a good example. The sidewalk work was done, I believe it was in '95, but they put a nice kind of a beige color. Okay. And let's see what else. So this plan doesn't really talk about, you mentioned widening shoulders for bikes, but does this plan encompass, there's an absolute need for wider shoulders going up over 92. I saw, coming home after work today, I saw someone working his way up the hill, and I almost wanted to yell out the window, "Be careful!" Because it's just unacceptable. We had a little bit of a wider shoulder at one time, and then they put guardrails all the way up to the road, so the shoulder that was there before can't be used. So can you tell me, does this plan incorporate, does it have influence on widening the shoulder around, it doesn't need a lot, just a little bit. Some areas there is a shoulder, but in some areas it's just non-existent.
Yeah, both in Connect the Coast, which of course includes 92, and in our plan, we have recommended, as a draft recommendation, wider shoulders on 92.
And Highway 1, yes?
Highway 1 is there are sort of two recommendations. One is the separated multi-use path, and then we're also looking at bike lanes or wide shoulders on Highway 1. Okay. So there are sort of two different types of cyclists that might be using those different facilities.
Okay. So I'm a cyclist and I use my bike a lot. If I need to get somewhere fast, I'm going to be on the highway.
Yeah.
If I'm, more of a pleasure ride and I'm not in a hurry, I, prefer the coastal trail.
Sure.
Or potentially the parallel trail. But right now, it's not safe to ride, on the side of the highway because cars are parked all the way up to the fog line. It's completely blocked.
Okay.
So what do you have to say about that?
Which area are you referring to? Specifically, we can take a look at it.
Mainly it's around north of Surfers Beach and south of Capistrano on both sides.
Dan, we're trying to hold to 3 minutes. We'll be able to come back to you, but I would like to get out to the audience.
I'm almost, last question. Done?
That's a delicate topic. I mean, if they're parked there, it's because there's the lack of parking elsewhere. And so removing that parking would have consequences in potentially neighborhood streets or wherever else people need to park if they're not parking there. I'll be honest, I don't have an answer to that right now, but we can certainly look into it. And I think that, if there were to be a bike lane there, we'd have to look at the right of way to see, do we have to, there are going to be trade-offs with some of these projects, and maybe parking is one of those, but I don't know off the top of my head. the answer to that question.
Thank you.
Joel, do you-
Yeah, some of these will require further study because, like Julia mentioned, there's trade-offs. To do one thing, it has an impact on something else.
Okay, so I'd like now to see if there are members of the audience with questions. If so, you can just raise your hand and come up to the microphone. Should anybody be, I see a hand
Right here.
behind. Go ahead.
Back here a little bit.
Sure.
I'm Maureen Lennon, Lost Beach. Oh, great presentation. I'm kind of gonna,
Before you start.
I'm sorry.
I'm on a crusade to get everybody's name right. So
Lennon.
Lennon.
Correct. First name is Maureen.
Thank you.
I'm going to kind of repeat what Dan said, because that's what I was going to ask, is, you know, if you're talking about pedestrian safety, is there any thought of grade separation, you called it, but the pedestrian overpass there where all these people park in the dirt parking lot? On the dirt parking lot they park, and then we all have to stop our, you know, and I do all the time, to let these families cross over to go down to the beach. I mean, dangerous, because they want to stand right there on the curve when you're coming up from Pacifica, or, you know, come in towards Pacifica. So is there any consideration for the grade separation pedestrian overpass in that area for the beachgoers?
Are you referring to Gray Whale Cove?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. North of Monte.
Yeah, Joel, do you know the specifics of the Gray Whale Cove, the status, or Carrie, what's going on with that? Because I know it's been studied previously.
I think the option that was being explored was a painted pedestrian crossing with potentially one of the flashing beacons or a hawk light, something of that sort. I don't know that a grade separated pedestrian overpass, I don't know that that's being explored.
Yeah, and I'm saying they're cheaping out then, you know, because we're gonna get, what did I hear, 14 different crossings across the highway, all the way between the tunnel and half.
So to take that particular point, there were many meetings about that, and there was much controversy.
Yeah.
But basically, there was no overcrossing and no undercrossing there.
Yeah.
It's a conversation that also involves Caltrans, so we've made
Sure,
note of it, but
sure.
we're not going to be able to move the needle on that tonight.
No, I'm just putting my input in, so I want you to hear it.
Yeah, I want to hear it as well.
And thank you. And then my other point, same one that you brought up, Dan, is 92.
Excuse me, if we could hold with the one meeting, thank you. Come on.
Is the 92. It's dangerous. It's dangerous for the bicyclers going up and down that road. So, you know, we're hoping you're widening that up. It's because you come around those curves and there they are.
Yeah.
They're just right there, and it's just waiting to be happening. As far as the crosswalks go, folks, that one that we have by the Coastside Market, crossing over, at night, cars are, it's a 50 mile an hour, 55 through there. You know, they need to have those side ones flashing yellow, like I've seen in some of the other crosswalks, or like in San Mateo across 3rd Avenue, they've got the little yellow things going across, so you can actually see people out there in the middle. It's not helpful. I mean, it looks dangerous to me still. And then I just want one other question, maybe somebody knows here. What's going on the highway up there across from Whale Cove Beach?
Caltrans is repairing the undercut road.
I'm sorry.
The road has been undercut for about 7 months. Caltrans is repairing it.
Just repairing, so they're not widening there for any kind of bike
If I
path
can
or
interrupt
anything?
that, talk to Caltrans. Caltrans has widened the highway there so that you can go around the construction. So it's been widened for the construction, but it will return to its original configuration when it's finished.
No widening. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
I just
Anyone
want to
else?
add that, you know, you talked about being unsafe for the bicycles, but also for the cars.
Sure.
If a bicycle weaves in, the car could, you know, get startled and hit another car. So it's,
Yeah, unsafe for everyone.
Anyone else in the public? Lisa?
Is this for questions only, or is this, can we just comments as well?
We're going to comments next, so I don't see more questions. Okay, we'll come back to the council first, the discussion. Anything you'd like to bring up? Lisa?
I just wanted to get this all out to you in case something resonated. I'll try and go quickly. So the bike plan, the maps there, could mark the existing shared-use Dardanelle Trail, which connects Airport Street with California. That'll make the map look better because it's existing. It's the coastal trail. And also in the parallel trail that is marked as future all along Highway 1 through Moss Beach and Montera is planned, I believe, to be on Carlos Street through Moss Beach, not on the highway. And in Montera, it's planned to be on Main Street, not on the highway there. So Moss Beach didn't have any to the pedestrian maps. There was nothing there in Moss Beach. I just want to point out there is a sidewalk gap on Carlos Street in the vicinity of the pizzeria. There's also standing water, always pretty much, at the post office driveway entrance. And the west side of the highway in the commercial area of Moss Beach, in the safety mobility plan, it calls for sidewalk, or let's just say dedicated pedestrian pathway, whatever, from Cypress to Winky Way on the west side. That's the commercial area. And the MCC has been working on several issues in that area of wide open highway access. It's a problem, the gas station there, but basically, and then as development occurs, we getting segments of sidewalks, but that's important, I believe, if we want to have people walking from the neighborhoods and going to these commercial businesses, to have the west side needs a pedestrian access. In Princeton, this is my stopping ground, so the Capistrano crosswalk proposed at Prospect is fine. There's already 2 other crosswalks on Capistrano, but I would prefer that as the short-term improvement. It currently says long-term, and then there's a short-term suggestion for adding stop signs on Capistrano, making that a 3-way stop at Prospect, and I would be opposed to that. I think that's more a traffic circulation issue, and it's going to have other effects that are not desirable. So I would look at that more closely, but I wouldn't just throw that out there. I mean, maybe, yeah, throw it out. But anyway, let's see. The coastal trail wayfinding signage already exists in Princeton. It may be hard to see sometimes because basically where the people walk along the side, you're competing with parking spaces. So if there's cars parked there, then you got to walk in the street, and then maybe the sign gets hidden. But the signage is there, the pathway is there. There's just some competition with the parking. Also, if you want to do pedestrian lighting, there is no lighting district in Princeton, west of the creek, or on Airport Street, south of Los Banos or one of those. So I would imagine that's going to be an issue if you want to have even pedestrian scale lighting, because there's no lighting district. The
Time's about up.
On-street parking uses, the coastal trail. This issue of, this came up in Montera as well, where there is no sidewalk, and the suggestion that perhaps a wooden curb stop or something could be put along there. It's a trip hazard. You got to weigh that. And as I get older and more clumsier and frail and whatever, this is significant to trip over something like that. If you're on a sidewalk with a curb, you're conscious of that. But if you just throw down a 4x4, it could be a problem. So bollards maybe. I don't know. But just consider the trip hazard of that kind of treatment. In Montera, you note that block there and the sidewalk gaps and it was the substandard along 7th Street. Basically, that block between Main Street and the highway has these open drainage ditches, which it makes it impossible or hazardous to even park your car, much less walk or anything. So those two, that's an issue for all users in that area. And the sidewalk gaps. Once again, the thing about the curb stops is a problem. I guess that's it. Here's this thing.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, Michelle?
Yeah, I have a comment and a question. My comment first is that I know some people have made comments about the community being opposed to sidewalks as a whole. I don't know that that necessarily reflects all members of the community. And as like the only member with a young child on the council, I would just like to say I actually do think in some areas, not everywhere, but in some areas sidewalks are needed. And it's a safety issue, especially for older people or young children. And my question is that I know we're doing a project with Common Knowledge about just general community feedback. As a whole, it should help us get answers to some of these questions as to what the broader community does feel about certain issues. Yeah. Are you planning to tap into that through the county or through us?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're in touch with them.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Okay.
Yes, I just wanted to say on all these crossings, overpasses versus underpasses, you know, every time someone hits a button and stops the traffic flow on Highway 1, there will obviously be a traffic backup impact. If there's an underpass, obviously the pedestrians can cross at any time and there will be zero impact for pedestrians crossing. So I'm an advocate of underpass versus overpass because it's much less travel to just step down 8 feet as opposed to stepping up and over 16 feet. The shorter distance will mean that it would be used more often.
Thank you, Dan. Okay. Well, look, thanks very much for the presentation. It was very informative. It looks like we'll see you again, but...
Thanks for having us. Yes, please do stop by the post office this Saturday in Granada if you like.
Are the representatives for the Devil's Slide Ride here? Yes.
Good evening. Thank you for having us again. My name is Diana Conti. I'm the CEO of Parka. For those of you who have not heard of Parka, we've been around since 1952 serving people with developmental disabilities in San Mateo County and part of Santa Clara County. We serve about 1,000 people a year. And this is one of our fundraisers. It's our 9th year that we're putting on the Devil's Slide Ride and the Devil's Slide Runs. So we're here again to talk to you about that. And there is virtually no change from previous years. We did add a 50K on the run to the 30K, but it's essentially the same route with when they'll go around one part of it twice. So it's the same thing. We have the course marking is biodegradable arrows, and we pick them up right afterwards. We have many steps in place so that there's no littering. And we have, you know, massive safety measures for the events. And it's been a great event to have. We love being in the community. The participants love being here. We bring a lot of people in to experience the beauty of the coast, and hopefully stay and have dinner before they go home.
How many participants were there in different events last year?
We were at about a little under 600.
Pretty awesome. Okay. Well, yeah, I think you've cut out quite a name for yourself and the tents in there. That's great. Other than general support, is there anything else you need from us in terms of letters, or I think you got that process pretty well set up?
We just need just something from you to say we're here, you know, that we made a presentation. So hopefully no objections. And
who should we send that to?
Actually, if you could send a copy to me, and then we can forward that along with we send in our permits. We have like several, but probably have to send it to Caltrans, San Mateo County Public Works.
Yeah, we get close to 30 permits a year for this. It's a long course.
Okay. But from us, there's a letter of general support that you
just
can
in
use
general, yes.
places.
We came in and made a presentation. It can be, you know, 2 or 3 lines.
Gotcha. Great.
No, we've really deeply appreciated your support all these years, and we're very happy to be part of this and part of the coastal community.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would like someone on the council just to propose that they draft a short letter of support for the event.
I'll move. A second.
And can do that, so I won't actually have it here, but we'll get that out to you.
Great, thank you.
Any comments from the audience? Okay. Excuse me.
I was asking, how do you raise your funds? I mean, participants pay for what? How much to get into the race, to participate?
Oh, it depends on the length of the event, but it goes anywhere from 60 to, if you go on the longest events, day of registration is about 125. So we have on the ride, we have a 40-mile metric century and a full century ride. On the runs, we have a 4K, 11K, a half marathon, a 30K, and a 50K. So there's different routes for different people, and it's really great fun. And we have a wonderful lunch afterwards at the Pacifica Community Center. It starts and ends there. So come join us. We'd love to have you all.
Yeah, we need participants and we need volunteers.
We also need volunteers. Yeah.
Very good. Claire, did you have a question?
I can leave the car.
Excuse me. Hold on. Claire?
I was just wondering if we can just authorize you to send them something and not have to come back and vote on it.
No, that's what I thought the amendment was. Okay. General support. All those in favor of that? Thanks. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. If anybody is interested in a card, I can get you any information about it.
And on the website, you sign as a volunteer.
I'll leave these on the table, there's
Trail runs.
Parka.org?
Actually, we have the website set up for the event, so one is devilslideride.org and the other one is devilsliderun.org.
And the other thing that's very fun about the event is that our clients help at the aid stations. So they're there, they're helping out, get out food and drink, and they love to cheer on the participants. And there's a really wonderful interaction between the athletes and the participants. So the clients look forward to this all year. It's a long day for them and they work hard, but they're part of it. And they know that they're instrumental in making this work. And there's just, they feel so accepted by the athletes and the community that that's actually as important as raising the money for partner. So,
and the feedback we get from the participants is great. That's their favorite part.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. The next item, C on our agenda, has been postponed to the next meeting. Moving ahead, we got the labeling of the items is not in alphabetical order, but the next item up is on Cypress Point. When originally put forward for the agenda, it was viewed as a letter that would involve approval, but as I reviewed the situation overall, I found several areas where there was really lack of information or lack of clarity, so I posted a letter and sent it to both the planning department and copies to the Coastal Commission, and it was available for all to look at. The three major points it brought out were, first, the most detailed letter that the MCC wrote about the Cypress Point project was done in August of 2018. We gave those explicitly to the Commission on January 7th, together with other letters we've done. And for some reason, when they did their response, they gave explicit response to the two smaller letters and did not give a response to our 822 letter, which really embodied the sort of heavy review we'd done. So I asked them to address that, because basically that was done after a public meeting and an initial summary of comment. So we put a lot into it and haven't gotten anything back. In looking at the whole area of environmental comment, both in discussing with the county or some with the commission, I found that while there's the general purpose statement of we certainly want to do environmental review of things when they process the amendment, there's no guidance at all about what that means or what to look at within their 600-page report to know how to comment. So I was asking for some guidance on that. And finally, in the statements made in earlier by the applicant, there was a comment to close off Carlos Road North and access to the highway. And then following that up through 2 or 3 years of discussion, there was never anything explicit about it, although it was sort of acknowledged that you would really need Carlos Road to be an active part of the project. So I couldn't find too much in particular. And then the recently released Connect the Coast Side project had a concept diagram that showed basically Carlos being extended and having an intersection with Highway 1 on the north end of Carlos. So all of these were, I think, important things to look at, but not nearly enough information at this point to bring it to a comment. That was a serious concern for me because we felt that that was going to come before the commission again on the 25th of this month, or the 25th of March, I should say. Well, we've heard from Lisa tonight as they pushed it back at a minimum another month. So basically, I'm looking to get information in this area to help inform what we should look at or might comment on from that. So by sharing it there, I was basically just giving the council and the public information about that. And as they push back the date, I think there has to be serious review by the council, but that won't be today. And I did not expect that. This was done in anticipation of having to put together a comment at our next MCC meeting, which will be on March 11th. So that's basically an update associated with that letter. And if you have any comments that relate to that, this would be the point to make them. The next 2 items are looking at comments the MCC wanted to include that dealt specifically with building height. One was a redraft and one was one we approved to make comments on. So we'll consider those after I open if there are comments on the project, and I have several slips here, so I assume this is where we're going to put those. Yes, Claire?
I have big questions about the process. I'm not sure what's going on. We wrote a letter based on detailed discussion with the council as to what we wanted to say. I don't see the letter anywhere. I don't know what happened to it.
It is.
And what?
There's 2 separate items. It looks
Oh, there are 2 separate
Yeah.
items? Okay, never mind. But did you send this letter without the vote of the council?
Yeah, it was a letter from me individually requesting information.
That's unclear.
It's not on the council letterhead.
Well, that's true, but it's not unclear.
No, I thought as a chair, I was in a position to put those requests for information forward. It didn't involve any decision-making, but an effort to get information to come to us.
I feel the same way. I'm unclear. So this got sent by you as an individual?
By me as the chair of the council with those concerns to get information, but did not involve any representation of conclusions being made by the council.
It seems like a gray area.
So this letter here?
Yeah.
No, the email. No, the one.
No, the one that's sent to Steve Monowitz.
Dan. It's like an email.
It's an email.
It's the one that Len sent out for the agenda list.
February 25th at 9:38 p.m.
Yes.
And I will say, Len consulted with me on whether it was appropriate to send this as the chair without it being a council letter. And I thought it was appropriate since it is a letter from the chair of the council, not a letter from the council.
That's great. That's very great, in my opinion. Okay.
So it's not as an individual, it's as the chair of the MCC.
I think we should be careful with this kind of thing.
Right. I think that's so. I think we have to look at the fact that there are large processes going forward somewhat in parallel, both involving Cypress Point, roadways, et cetera, and we need better information on all of those.
But we could have waited till today.
I agree with you, yeah, I agree.
Well, I was bringing what I put forward so you'll know what's coming out.
So you said that you sent it as an individual, but it says here,
No, I said
raising these points as MCC chair.
Correct. just as I can call, and do call these people for conversation, and basically it's putting some of that down on paper here.
I think it could have waited till today.
Okay, I'll take that under advisement.
Okay.
But, I think it's important to get this. And again, call the attention, it's not making any conclusions for council,
No,
except to emphasize things we brought forward.
You brought up some good
So for
points.
those who think it could have waited, I'm trying to clarify a point of procedure here rather than the letter itself. If the chair wants to send a letter as chair, are you saying you think it should be discussed before the chair does that?
I'm not saying anything, I was just asking, I just was unclear.
That's what I'm asking those who think it could have waited.
I think it could have.
Well, but point is, why would it have waited if it's the letter from the chair and not a letter from the council? And that's, I'm trying to find out if people think there's a procedural issue that we need to resolve.
It's detailed, it's not a, let's look at this overall and follow up. I mean, it is saying that, but it's much more detailed than a just casual, can we talk about this later kind of thing. It's almost making positions that the council probably would not object to, but it would be nice to know that it went out.
Mostly they're emphasizing positions we've taken but got no action on.
Right. But if we get some response, somebody says something to one of us saying, gee, I don't know what your problem is with this or that, or here's the answer to this or that, it would be good for us to know in advance that this is on the table.
So it sounds like, again, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, it sounds like you think there is a procedural issue.
It feels a little uncomfortable. It may be in black and white, it may be fine, but it feels.
I'm not trying to draw right or wrong, I'm just trying to understand if a significant part of the council thinks there's a procedural issue we should discuss at some point.
I guess the point I want to emphasize, the council as chair, you have the ability and responsibility to make conversations with people represented here just to inquire. And basically, all I'm really doing here is making the content of those exchanges public. Okay? But it does open up, Cypress Point, where I know there's interest. I have several speaker slips here.
But should we present the new letter first?
What I want, these are, I believe, if you wanted to, how many of the people who submitted speaker slips wanted to speak specifically to either of the two letters we're going to consider under the next two items? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did anybody want to speak on a more general level? That would be 1, 2. Okay, so why don't the two of you come up to speak? You got 3 minutes.
I apologize if I'm misunderstanding the agenda's right, but the two letters on the height limit I have no issues with. Okay.
That's what, they were put second because I think mostly people have concerns on it.
And I do appreciate your bias for action in asking for them to comment on a letter that was sent a long time ago. I can't comment on the policy or procedure issue. I wanted to make you aware that one of the major concerns that I had was the lack of an environmental review, and you mentioned this. I'm not here to take an opinion, but I want to point one thing out and then ask a question. Last night, Pacifica voted to essentially change the rules for their LCP amendment to bypass environmental review. Sound familiar? Okay, 3 of those council people were elected with a lot of contributions from SAMCAR, the real estate agency. That's 3 out of 5. So there seems to be a template now in place for the real estate interests trying to build the housing project, in this case on the beach, to get around environmental review. So I view this as a fundamental usurpation of the Coastal Commission and the rights of the community to get answers to this stuff, and I just wanted to flag that it seems to be a trend. Back to our situation, I would merely ask that you explain as a council to us what we're going to do when about getting an environmental review to be part of this process.
Okay. So to summarize that issue from conversation, the county in submitting the PUD has to get coastal commission approval, and it's appealable to them, obviously. When it came to the CDP and other permitting for the project itself, the specific framework of the LCP is that those fall outside the boundary for being appealable to the commission. This wasn't developed specifically for this project. Those are the 3 or 4 particular items that cover when you can appeal something to the commission. In the process of looking at the submission for the amendment and trying to wade through the 600 pages, and what's published on the website actually for the project by the county has 2 or 3 different things that relate to environmental factors that are referenced and included in the report. But when you say, and in conversation with commission staff about this, they say, yes, we're concerned and we do want to, review environmental considerations, but in asking them what that meant specifically, they acknowledge that it's an item of conversation because there isn't something that deals with it specifically on their end. Whether it's a neg deck or an EIR, those are associated with the CDP. Those would be done, submitted to the Planning Commission and to the Board of Supervisors and not be appealable to the Coastal Commission. And I believe they fully understand the dynamics of that, so I'm looking for their further comment on that. My concern was in commenting on the amendment and having environmental concerns to address, there's no way to look at the 600-page report and say, what is it I should be concerned about responding to or making particular statements on. So that's what I'm looking to hear back from them about. I don't know if that helped, but that was the intention there. I don't have further information on the point other than to acknowledge what you said. Let's see, next was Herman.
Yeah. So I want to give Harold Herman more speech. So the same point here, environmental impact report. When I see the draft comment letter, and thank you for really pushing further. The first version, second version, now the third looks a lot better. Why is the MCC not requesting an EIR?
What's that?
Why are you not requesting an EIR? Formally put a line in and say we want to see a proper EIR. I know the
county say there'll be an EIR. They're saying it goes with the permitting, which is potentially a correct place to put it. I think what you're asking is why not an EIR for the amendment?
Yeah, so what I can say from a community perspective is, so 4 years ago when this all started, pretty much from the get-go, the community said we want to have a proper environmental impact review. To date, we haven't seen that. What we know is a lot of research done. This is an ex-Navy site. Typically, when the Navy military leaves, they burn, bury everything. So that's one. We have from a letter from 1989. We have a letter from an asbestos abatement company, basically stating there's asbestos-contained material detected all over the site. So we have that. That's factual. And we know that Midpen plans to move 600 truckloads of dirt around. So the site going to be disturbed. I have children. There are children in close proximity to the site. They're going to be, depending on weather conditions, a lot of dust in the air, all this stuff going to be airborne. I think we as a community, we have a right to get a proper environmental impact report. And we're dancing around this for 4 years now. Now I wonder, what does it take? Do we need to go to the media and basically provide some more of the material? I mean, we have very detailed site maps from the Navy side. So there was a gas pump station, there was an incinerator, all that stuff. There's no evidence that that was ever cleaned up. We are still asking, and what we're asking for the MCC is...
Where they're saying that will occur is when the applicant applies for a coastal development permit.
Yeah, it is normal to do an EIR when you do the project. And they have not done that yet.
What they're doing now is the amendment. It turns out because of their other criteria, only the amendment is an item that comes before the commission for review and appeal. The CDP does not because of the location of the project most specifically. Okay. But at the same time, they're recognizing that and speaking about concerns on environmental review, and that's where I'm trying to get further information. But in answer to your question, if you ask why won't you do an EIR, or they say we'll do that when they apply for the CDP.
Yeah, so I have additional comments on the POD, but I think that's the next agenda item, where I see basically false information stated in the POD.
Okay.
And that relates also to Isha, the distance on Terra Creek. So there are disconnects, and I just don't trust the process. I'm as a resident, I see a green light here from the county, they're pushing that through, and at the end of the day, the community is going to live with the consequences. And if asbestos is in the air or in the soil or gets in the water, I mean, we're dealing with it.
So what I hear you say there is you have an item for the PUD letter where you'd like something included.
Yeah, so I have,
Okay.
actually, if I can bring it forward, or is that the next agenda item?
That's the next agenda item.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there are no further comments on item E, as it's labeled here, we're going to move next to item D, which is a Cypress Point PUD letter.
Lynn?
Yes?
It says
Claire?
desired outcome and approved letter. Is there a letter we're approving?
No, that's what I said. I
So it's-
changed. This is on E?
It's at E.
No, what I did instead is provide the information I sent.
Okay.
And I did not provide a letter for the council to approve.
Okay.
So, letter E, this was with Michelle this time, is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Do you want to pull it up, or
I
we
can
have
if
copies?
you'd like.
We have copies out in the front. I think that's good. Okay, so I'm just gonna, we've reviewed now 2 versions of this letter at 2 previous meetings. I'm gonna focus on what has changed since the last letter. There's several things that have changed. The first is the addition of 2 people to the CC lines. Stephanie Rexing, North Central District Supervisor at the California Coastal Commission, and Eric Martinez, who's the Coastal Program Analyst at the California Coastal Commission. Second change is the statement, like the first sentence of the letter that says the majority of the Midcoast Community Council, as well as community members who have spoken at recent public meetings, continue to oppose the Cypress Point project. So we talked last time about, we did a straw poll vote of wanting to say that the majority of the council opposes the project, and that's what I added here. And then we added just a slight change to the wording in the second paragraph where it talks about how, so it adds the scope of this letter is limited to the PUD amendment, and then it just says we request 3 changes to the proposed amendment as detailed below. And then I added sections to the building height. So first section is building height. None of the content of the building height section has changed, just the addition of the heading, because now we have 2 additional points that we're making. The second point is building setbacks. One of the proposals in the amendment is to change the setback on the west side of the property from 20 to 11 feet. And so we oppose that. We want to keep it at 20 feet. And then the next section is project density. And so this one is where we are basically proposing or recommending, saying that we would like the number of housing units to be further reduced. So, can't remember the original number, I think it was 148 in the existing PUD. And then they are proposing changing it to 71 all affordable housing units. What we're asking here is for that to be further reduced to 46 units. I'll just read what the explanation of why we came to that number. So we say, although the proposed zoning amendment would reduce the project density from medium-high density to medium density, the 71 affordable housing units proposed would be concentrated within a 5.39 acre area on the parcel, representing a density of 13.17 units per acre. Which is still pretty high density for that space. We therefore request that the number of housing units for the site be reduced further to 46 units, representing a density of 8.53 units per developed acre, or 4.23 units per total acre of the parcel. This further reduction in density would preserve the community character of the neighborhood and help alleviate the impact on traffic and local resources that Midcoast constituents care about deeply. So, yeah, just trying to reduce the number of units overall. And then I added the conclusion paragraph, which is summarizing the 3 requested changes and adding that we would like a response regarding the previous letters especially the comprehensive letter that was dated 8/22/18, which never received a response from the planner. And then just end it with a sentence saying, "Thank you for considering the people most affected by this project as you evaluate the amendment and the project as a whole."
Okay. The thing I want to highlight to the public in terms of the letter, these letters going forward, is the council has purposely tried to make them fairly specific and as aligned to the amendment as possible, because we think that has maximum effect. We were specifically not looking to give the broadest look at the project itself within our response to the PUD. And now that the Planning Commission has pushed out their date to late April, I think that's certainly the path we want to follow. So I think in response in advance to the comments you might make, we aren't looking to expand this letter specifically for the reason that it's not to our advantage to put multiple letters out. The 8/22 letter was really sort of the concentrated effort on a broad look. We didn't fully realize that how we've been shorted on that in the January 22nd meeting until we looked in a lot further detail. And going forward, we know we need to make a strong response for their next session, which is now scheduled for late April, which means we want to consider probably in early April what to say in that letter. But that's why we would like further information on a number of points. And obviously, we've talked both about the 8/22 letter and other things. So I want to give all of you a chance to speak to it, but just to let you know in advance, we're not looking to really expand the content of this letter because we think that gets lost in the noise, and we'd like to be as strong and specific as possible. Okay?
One thing I failed to mention is that we will be attaching the 3 previous letters to this letter.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so I will go first with JQ Oswine.
Hi, I'm JQ, resident of Moss Beach. I'm a little confused about the letters, because you actually have 3 letters on the agenda. There was an item F too.
I'm sorry, the first letter on the agenda was replaced by the email communication I made and shared that. The second letter on the agenda is the one that we have gone through twice before, dealt primarily with height, but we had some additional comments. Michelle authored this version of it, and she just covered that.
Yeah.
So that's the item we're considering now.
What's item F?
The F, when we had the presentation by MidPen Open Space and other groups, they wanted an amendment process to the LCP and explained to us what that was required for. And we were supportive of that, but we felt there was a particular way in that we could include a response that also amplified our concerns about height limits. And so we included that wording into the letter. So that
it's about a different project.
It's a different
It's a different project, and we're including some language in there that has to do with height limits.
I think it would help everybody if we give a little more detail on the item.
No, we come to that next. We're on the letter on that.
When you're writing the agenda,
I understand.
Put a little more detail so there's not so many questions.
Understand?
Okay. I'm not really sure then if I'm responding to this letter or the one coming up next, but
No, the one that's coming up next is not about Cypress Point at all.
Okay. That's why I didn't understand. All right, the county's approach to review of MidPen's incomplete and inadequate Cypress Point application has created confusion and concern that the community's many environmental issues with this project will not be adequately addressed. We're also concerned that the developer and the county will seek to minimize further CEQA review during the CDP stage, under the assumption that appeals to the county or the Coastal Commission for such further review during the CDP stage will not be considered legally necessary after the developer does submit a CDP. And after that, we think that they will propose a project that's consistent with the new zoning, the amended LCP, and the new PUD. They may then argue that the county may accept that the CEQA review that was already done was complete with the new zoning and the new PUD approval, and that no further studies are required for a CDP that exactly matches the LCP. This is unacceptable, as environmental review done to date is wholly inadequate to support this project. We do not trust that the issues with this project will be adequately addressed at the CDP stage, given the county's approach and Mid-Penn's misrepresentations. We therefore believe a thorough secret review and EIR must be done prior to consideration of an LCP amendment, zoning change, and new PUD approval, and we request that MCC reflect this sentiment in their letter to the Planning Commission. The EIR should also inform the number of affordable units based on a reduction in all environmental impacts to less than significant.
Okay. Thank you. So, as I said, in terms of your request for a letter now that requests some form of environmental review in the PUD, we expect to consider that position, I guess broadly, because we don't exactly know what vehicle they want to refer to prior to it going to the Planning Commission, but that won't be at this meeting. Okay. Next is Mary Epstein.
Hello, my name is Mark Epstein.
Sorry.
I am not an environmental activist, and I'm certainly not an environmental engineer, but I am a member of the community. I live in Moss Beach, and I know for sure that a project of this density will have environmental impact, and I basically believe that it would be a dereliction of duty of this council not to forcefully pursue the environmental impact report before the plans and the permit is applied for or considered. It is very, very important. I appreciate the change to the setback. It's wonderful. And I appreciate the change for the height limit. It's wonderful. And the reduction of the number of units is also wonderful. However, I respectfully request that you include a fourth point, which is to forcefully request the environmental impact report in advance, because this makes it look like it's a done deal, and we reject it for all the reasons that have been discussed for all these meetings. So thank you very much.
Okay, next is Elizabeth Perlson.
Hi, good evening. I've never spoken in front of the council before, but it's a pleasure to be here. And I just actually wanted to support my comrades because I feel that we're on the same wavelength. And my concern is that I do appreciate the changes in the letter, and definitely in regards to the density and the setbacks and the height, but it does feel like a done deal. This really feels like this is something that's going to happen, and we haven't had this environmental impact report. And that really concerns me greatly. I live in Moss Beach. I do have a young child, and it's very concerning, and I really urge you to put something forceful in there about having an environmental impact report. On another note, I read some of the traffic analysis and the agency that did that report for Mid-Penn, and I was shocked at the comment that they said Mid-Penn would need to actually educate the tenants not to use the bus stop across the street because it was too dangerous. So if they just educate the tenants to use the bus stop in 10 minutes walking distance down the street, that could work. That is not a solution to a problem. To me, that is part of the environmental issue. That was a very scary thing for me to read because somebody who wants to catch the bus, it's raining and they're late for work, is not going to walk 10 minutes to the other stop. There's a lot of issues that need to be uncovered here. So once again, I'm just going to reiterate what previous speakers have said, and please let's get an environmental impact report. Thank you.
Okay. Next is Ann Rothman.
I'm also from Moss Beach, and I actually have a different request. And mine has to do with the percent of affordable housing. It seems as though we're just greenlighting it and saying, oh, well, it's okay if you change it to 100% from the 35. And I'm saying you should write that you should not. Because If you change the zoning to 100% affordable, the new laws that the governor has put into place will supersede many of the current zoning laws and may make any appeals nearly impossible. It reduces the power of the Coastal Commission and the community's request for an environmental review or traffic mitigation measures. I think this is very significant and should not be overlooked. If you keep the percentage the same as it is, the process will remain in place with the power of the Coastal Commission. It gives the community a greater voice, and it gives you an opportunity to ask for 46 units instead of 72. If you change it and say, okay, it's 100% affordable housing, all of the new laws, all of everything that's been put into place to make affordable housing easier by bypassing a lot of the environmental reviews, that will happen. And this will be a done deal. If you don't write something in there to keep it as it is, the percentages that they currently are, I believe you're looking at a green light for sure without any kind of review or even being able to ask for certain things like height limit. Because if you just say, okay, 100% affordable housing, then the new rules and laws will take hold, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next is Maureen Lennon.
Hi, Maureen Lennon from Moss Beach. Michelle, third attempt. I think you heard our voices in your the letter is much improved, and thank you for that. I'm gonna also make a comment about the very first paragraph where you did express our voices. The last being concerns also been expressed by lack of resources to support the development, water, sewer, fire. Perfect place to put in all caps, strong community demand for a CEQA and an EIR, because that is one of our concerns that you just listed here. Perfect place, in caps, strong community support for CEQA and an EIR. I think that should definitely go in the letter right now, right up front, and let them know that that's what you're hearing over and over again from the community. And then on the second page, there's a italicized quotation there, and then the next paragraph I just think should just be scratched. It's not our job, your job, to tell the designers and the architects how they can reduce the height limit. It's a tacit.
I didn't reset that before you.
Keep going.
Sure, sure. It's a tacit approval. Just, well, if you go ahead and bring that height limit down, and you go ahead and you do it this way, we're giving you a suggestion. You're like saying, we're okay with it, here's how you can make it happen. The rest of the letter doesn't, give them tacit approval anyway, but this paragraph seems to say, this is how you can do it if you do it. It's not our job, it's not your job, it's the architect's and the designer's job. So those are my only two comments otherwise, and I strongly agree that we should have a real strong sentence in there reflecting what we've just said to you, and that is strong community demand for a CEQA and an ERR. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, yes, one more, come on up. Thanks.
Dolores Silva, Moss Beach, and I do have a couple of comments directly on the letter, which is on the first paragraph. You mentioned water, sewer, fire, but particularly roads is a big issue, and that's missing.
We do say traffic.
Roads.
Well, roads, where do you say that? You say?
The second sentence. The primary reasons cited include lack of access to amenities such as shopping and transit and increased traffic, both in the local neighborhood and on Highway 1.
But the roads are not sufficient either. I mean, I guess there's increased traffic, but the infrastructure of the roads is
narrow.
Very, they're very narrow. So
Street specific.
Yeah. In particular, Carlos Street, yes. And that's a big concern that we've stated over and over again. The other thing is the project density. I see that you came up with a rationale for 46, but really what we need is the density that results in not having these very significant impacts. The Coastal Commission actually asked them to produce that alternative, an alternative that would not have these significant impacts. And they didn't provide that. They said that, it just wasn't feasible for them to go forward with a project that was of lesser density. So I don't see that 46 based on that acreage is really a good reason. I mean, you could also even say, well, why not just build the 36 that are going to have local preference? I mean, I don't know. It just seems to me that the real reason we don't believe that this fits is because the infrastructure can't support it. So.
Agreed. I think it's hard to get to an exact number. We don't have the data.
Well, right.
To an exact number.
But that's why I'm thinking that you shouldn't provide a number, because this doesn't necessarily solve the problems we're talking about.
Well, one of the things that we've heard is that the project is not going to be feasible under 71 units, or not financially feasible. So I think requesting any number less than that could potentially be a detriment to the project as a whole.
Hold on.
The rationale for, we had a vote on this last week and we wanted to state a specific number, and we came up with the number 40. We wanted to develop, a strong rationale for choosing the number that we chose. I'm open to discussion on the council about a different number.
So at this point, I want to thank you for your comments. From a process standpoint, what I'm going to do is ask for the council to put forward a motion to adopt the letter, to see if there's a second for it. If there is, it will then proceed to discuss it, both at the council level and with the community. Okay?
Okay, and the third question I have for you, Len, is you stated a little while ago, I think it's what I understood, is you're hoping that they will respond to your letter that you sent by email or whatever, where you're asking that all these questions that had been previously asked and that have not been responded to, that will give you insight to some of these environmental issues that have been brought up in those letters. And that it's after that you expect, I got the impression that you expect to get an answer to that sometime in the near future, so that you will then have an opportunity to say something further about any environmental issues you are concerned about before the April meeting. Is that my understanding?
Yes.
So there is an opportunity in the future coming where you may ask for an EIR.
Correct. Well, yes. Now, the point on the problem I see with the EIR, and then I'll just make the statement that we want to move forward to consider the letter, is that what we know, talking to the commission or other people, is we're concerned with a good environmental review. From a process standpoint, the point to do your CEQA review, be it an EIR or a neg deck, is when they apply for the CDP. So if you come up and say, well, we really think we want an EIR or CDP now, probably your direct answer will be, this isn't the time and the place for it, which is probably correct. What we're trying to find out is, what do they propose to do to give environmental consideration at this point? First of all, there's lots of statements we've made and other organizations such as yourself has made, and what I want to do is find the best possible way to present them and then make sure they're presented and responded to. We now have certainly the time to do it deliberately, so that's where we're going. But we're not going to be able to craft, let's say, even if I thought it would work tonight to do exactly that, and I have concerns that it won't, we really couldn't, in a process sense, put statements like that in and vote it. We would need to put that forward as a formal statement. And certainly we need a good formal statement on the whole amendment process going forward. That's why I want more information. So,
okay. So my main question really has to do is to be sure that you are still worried about the EIR section and that you're looking for more answers, because it's still an issue.
Call it environmental review. We're big time.
Right, sure. Let's just call it environmental review, whatever format it takes.
As you'll notice in the letter I wrote, I also went to great lengths to talk about the roads as well and getting information there. But what I want to do now is thank you for your comments there and ask the council to get a motion to approve it so we can discuss it further. Okay?
I still have some PUD comments.
What's that?
I still have some PUD comments. Can I speak for? You said you had my card.
He had comments specifically to this letter.
Come on up.
Okay, thank you. So Harold Herman again, Moss Beach. I just want to highlight, so I skimmed through, I can't say I read the whole thing in full, but PUD 140, and I realized there's some false statements.
When you say you read through it, you mean there's 600-page document?
No, not the full, but just a thing. So a couple of items caught my eye, and I want to share that with the council.
Sure.
So page 4, they state Montera Creek at Perennial Stream is located approximately 250 feet to the northeast side of the site and runs parallel to the site northern border. So 250 feet. The 1985 EIR for a different project on the same site, so same site, states that the creek is 50 feet north of the site. So
That was an error.
Which one was the error?
It's more than 50 feet even from 16th.
Well, so I think there's a definition also regarding the creek and then the riparian corridor and the proximity to it. So I'm just saying there's a disconnect. I know Midpen loves to say it's just 50 feet because that keeps them out of 250 feet and that keeps them out of potential trouble. But I saw that number and that should be looked at.
Okay.
Second one is on page 10. The PUD 140 said the Midpen site does not contain any known geological hazards, such as fault lines, landslide zones, or areas that are susceptible to floods. So April 2019, California Geological Survey released new maps, and surprise, the Midpen property is part of a landslide and high liquefaction zone. So part of that site is in a high liquefaction zone, and all that area is actually part of a landslide zone.
That's not possible, it's on granite. Can't possibly.
Then look at the map. I assume that the California Geological Survey has experts in that area, and what they publish.
That's a reference you'll be able to give us to look at.
Yeah, so there's a disconnect there, because they clearly said there's no impact. The next one, that's the final one. Page 15, in the PUD 140, there's no words that 16th Street is failing to operate at the required level of service, but it's shown in the CTC as a deficiency. So Midpen only mentioned Ethelbert Street and California Avenue intersection with Highway 1 operate at a level of service at E level. But they miss 16th Street. So when you look at 16th Street and what we have in the plans now is a big roundabout. I think on the right east side of Highway 1 we have 2 homes owned by the same owner. There wouldn't be a roundabout on 16th Street unless there's a big development that needs a roundabout. So that's concerning. On that one I want to add, can I finish?
Go ahead.
So March 2016 was a draft Connect the Coast site. The update was January 2020. During this 3.5-year period, there was no public workshop or community input. But when I look at Connect the Coast site, this has a developer written all over it. So Moss Beach, so everything that's written out there is the county playing with the developer and make it all work. The community was not included in all this work. We got the report in January 2020. Correct. In addition, the traffic data are from 2014, and they admit that in the report. So the traffic data in Connect the Coast site are 6 years old. What has changed in 6 years?
The tunnel a lot.
The tunnel was built in March 2013 was the tunnel opened. 2014 they pulled the traffic data. Now we are 6 years later, and that's the data set they use. Now I would put a big question mark behind it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the letter?
So
Second? Second, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Okay, moved and seconded. Okay, at this point, we'll have discussion by the council, and we'll start this time on my left with Dan.
Okay, so Greg brought up something's going on in Pacifica, thank you. Yeah, that has got me concerned. All of the whole process to this point has got me concerned, and it looks like the applicant will, or the county will move towards a neg deck or just skirt through this. I think every community member tonight, asking for, in the letter, to have in the letter strong community support for an EIR is valid. I don't know that it is absolutely inappropriate to be asking for that. Yes, they could have an EIR when they apply for the CDP, but it is not wrong to have it in the letter now. In fact, I believe it is very much needed. So, and frankly, I don't understand why there's so much resistance to it.
Okay, is that enough? Dan? Dan, are you finished?
Yes.
Okay, Dave?
So first of all, I want to correct something I said in error at our meeting on the 12th. The existing documents, environmental, I'll call them environmental impact documents, although not, did not conclude there's an insignificant traffic impact. They concluded there is a significant cumulative traffic impact. So I wanted to correct my misstatement from that meeting. I am torn on this letter now. The logic for reducing the density is not appropriate for a PUD. PUDs are PUDs explicitly so the density is taken over the entire project, not the area where the project is built, and that's to encourage open space rather than more units or sprawl. So I completely disagree with that logic, and I really do not like the request for fewer units. I'm not sure at this point whether I'm going to vote for or against this letter. The other points to me are very important, but I'm not in favor of the reduced density.
Good enough.
Quick question on that. Would you be in favor of the reduced density if it had different logic, or are you just going to vote against this letter most likely regardless?
I honestly am not sure which way I'm going to vote, but and we discussed this at the last meeting, and I know I'm in a minority on this, but asking for reduced density does not seem appropriate to me.
Anything further now, Michelle?
Yeah, I'll just pass.
Okay, go last. Go ahead, Mike.
I really don't want to rewrite this letter in the meeting, although I think some minor adjustments might be okay. And I think it might be reasonable to put in that list of things that the community consistently is concerned about, a statement about an environmental review. I think that would be okay. In terms of the number on these units, I'm the one that threw out a number. And the point of my throwing it out was to say, basically, that we're not okay with 71. And if we just say we're not okay with 71, they're going to say, oh, well, we knew that all along. So, but putting in a number gets their attention.
Thank you.
Barbara?
Well, I agree with Claire on the number of units. I agree with everybody on that. I'm just really torn because the letter is, I still don't understand that there's only 4 things being addressed, yet there's this huge summary that's going to the staff that's very misleading. The whole thing is totally misleading. And then today to pick up the Half Moon Bay Review and see that Supervisor Horsley made a remark about the property in Montera and saying, well, the people on the Midcoast don't want low-income housing or affordable housing. I don't think we ever said that. It wouldn't matter if it was $3 million condos going in there.
Remote locations is what he said.
Well, regardless, that they should be separate. Because none of us have said we don't want affordable housing. We don't want any housing developed in that area because it's not, the infrastructure's wrong. So it's hard to support this letter when I don't know what exactly it is the Planning Commission's going, if it's just these 4 things, or if it's the whole project, because I agree with what everybody's saying. It's like it's a done deal. So I'm torn.
Well, I don't think it's entirely a done deal. Back to the request, the repeated request that come out, really, in this stage and with this letter, to say we really want, what we're effectively saying, we want a CEQA study done now. And basically, you can turn that around and say, well, if they do it now and they produce it and it passes, and maybe then you can't, but you would come back at the permit stage, which is the right place to do it. And then if they said, well, we've already done it, we did it back then, that I don't think that would be feasible. But the point of our meeting tonight is, I mean, even if I wanted to do that path, I would certainly spend some time talking to both the Coastal Commission about it, as well as council from the county and others, because we don't want to just come up and recommend, please do this right now because we really want it right now. It has to be pinned on something. And furthermore, there's a lot of specific things to consider, which is the letter I wrote was trying to bring those to the surface. So I don't believe the council is in any way in a position to respond to your request to do those things tonight. Certainly we want to make a strong response, and we have now the chance to do it in a timely fashion. So I want to emphasize that. So my consideration on the letter is whether I would vote for it on its face, because I don't think the council would accept an amendment request to say we would like to have an EIR or a CEQA process done as part of the amendment and put that in a letter tonight. It just wouldn't be right to do it. So that's my statement there. Question?
Can I make a comment? It seems like you're adding words that we did not say. Nobody was saying now that we were asking for that.
Well, we were considering this letter.
Our concern is that they're going to try to bypass it altogether.
There will be an EIR for this project, period.
We're hearing that people are starting to know that you don't.
No,
Because a project of this size always has.
They're required.
That's what you've been saying, but we don't see it yet.
We're not asking for
What
it now.
they have
We're
said,
demanding it's done.
excuse me, they've said directly in conversation, and the process is when they do the CDP, they have to have a CEQA process. They might come and say, we want a neg deck versus an EIR, but that's there. It's going to be done there. That's what the process calls for. What I've said is tonight, we're not in a position, what I've heard some people say is, we want you in this letter to request a CEQA process as part of the amendment application, which is what's before the Planning Commission now.
Well, can I comment again first?
Let's say,
Can we
hold on.
discuss in the council first?
Go ahead.
All we were, or at least I think what we're saying is, in this first paragraph here, under subject, with all of our objections and for all of the reasons, and something that's been stated all along, not that we're saying do it now, but we are strongly, the community is strongly demanding that it is done, whatever point that may be. That's all we're saying. Is
They've already said they'll do it with the CDP.
Okay, I just want to make a motion. Can I make a motion?
Hold it. No, question. Just a minute.
An amendment?
Michelle, you mean an amendment?
I would like to make a motion to have an amendment. Is that the right way? No?
Yes, that's the right thing to do.
Okay,
On the
thank you.
amendment letter?
Amendment to the amended letter on the amendment. It would be to, and I could just display my screen, but basically to just modify the last sentence of the first paragraph. It currently says concern has also been expressed about lack of resources to support the development, particularly water, sewer, and fire, comma, as well as the interest in, let me figure out the exact language, but basically something like, as well as the interest in an environmental impact report, or we can call it CEQA.
Or environmental review.
Environmental review. I just be easier if I just show my screen.
Maybe not
You
just
get the
interest,
screen
but
up.
demand.
I've even lost track.
Or
of what that
concern,
was.
or
Do you have the
more
right-
than interest.
Do you have the right adapter, or does this one fit?
That should. No.
I think you have, because you have the
No,
other
I
book,
have
it
a
won't
little-
work.
Okay, I just propose an amendment to that first paragraph around that. But should we go around and see if that's,
Well, say again what you want. I've got,
let me just,
you're not going to give
let's
it
just
on
see
this-
if it's like of interest to everyone on the council, and then I'll put the exact language.
Well, because it wasn't on the screen, I couldn't
I know,
see
I
exactly
don't
what
have
fit.
it exactly
Can you
yet.
just paraphrase?
Yeah, so just so we already said, so in the first paragraph, we're saying that that the majority of the council as well as the community opposes the project, and then we're saying the primary reasons cited include lack of access to amenities such as shopping. I propose adding the word roads, shopping, roads, and transit, and increased traffic, both in the local neighborhood and on Highway 1. The only change to that second sentence is the word roads. Then the third sentence currently states, concern has also been expressed about lack of resources to support the development, particularly sewer and fire, comma, as well as the strong interest in an environmental impact report.
Just say and environmental impact.
That's saying concern has been expressed about that. There's not concern about an environmental impact report.
Well, I would just say put an
The
environmental.
lack of an environmental impact report.
Can we ask for full environmental impact report?
No, that
Or
calls
just
out a
say-
definite, no, it calls out a definite process.
Say that there's support for a full
Environmental study.
impact report.
If you say you want a full environmental impact report, you'll probably be told that doesn't belong at this stage. But everybody discussing it is open to discussing.
So maybe I can come up with some compromise language.
Okay.
You can request an environmental impact report on the LCP amendment itself. Significant LCP amendments do on occasion have full EIRs.
I don't
Asking
know
for
that
one on
that's
the project.
So.
I don't think that's what my proposal is, to express the demand or the interest in an environmental impact report as part of other broad concerns, but to keep the main content of this letter focused on the 3 issues relative to the amendment. That's my proposal.
Okay, now, Dave, could you give us, we'll just keep these up in parallel if that's okay, just to.
You want to back up?
Sure. But I'll send you the Word version.
You could mail it to me.
Yeah.
Can I make one other suggestion?
Let's stay with this up here first. Okay, thanks.
I'd like to hear the suggestion from the community member.
We can move next. Dave Spectacle.
I'm waiting for.
Okay, while we're having a technical pause, what's your comment?
Pending this, just a suggestion in the language about the 46 units. I think everybody might be happy to say no more than 46 units, rather than specifying 46, say no more.
In general, they've used a not to exceed on the different numbers already.
Can I just ask why no one is opposed to changing it to 100% affordable housing from the current standard? I really don't understand.
No, because they do that. If the project converts and says they want to go to 100% affordable housing, then what they said, at least in the paper, all of this requires.
Seeing it, I'm trying the web interface.
Why is Letter not opposed to changing it? Why are you not saying?
You use your
No
MCC
one
email,
has
right?
ever said
Or is it your
they are
bigger
in
email?
opposition because they're changing
There it
it. They're
is.
changing the zoning to 100% affordable affordable housing. Right now, it's only 35. Moderate, and that's a little. It is, and this is what I'm saying, why is no one catching this, and why is no one putting that in? That it should remain as it is, so that you provide housing for everyone on the coast, regardless of income.
Because that's
I mean,
not the kind of project that Mid-Penn builds.
Well, of course, but they're trying
So
to,
that-
so why don't
Excuse
you
me,
say, go
excuse
and
me.
change the language?
Excuse me.
Simply.
Excuse me. Do we have prospects for getting it?
Yes, it's here.
I just don't understand. I just don't understand.
I agree with you, that how we put it in, I'm not quite.
I don't know, but well, you just simply say you don't want to change
wish I read
the.
So once it's rezoned to the mid-Penn, you're only rezoned.
Yeah, there's only the.
Okay, excuse me, audience, please. Would like to bring attention back up here. Dave, will you?
Yep, it's up.
So this is my proposed amendment.
Can you zoom it in so it's legible?
What?
Is it possible to zoom it? Make it
It's
text
zoomed
over?
as much as I can get it and have it fit on the screen.
Want me to zoom the
No, because
projector?
Can you just read it to us?
Yeah, I can read it. So again, in that second sentence, I've added roads. And then in the last sentence, I'll read the whole sentence.
Could we have a quiet in the audience?
Concern has also been expressed about lack of resources to support the development, particularly water, sewer, and fire, as well as strong interest in an environmental impact report.
Could we change interest to something
No.
stronger?
Did you have? So that was it. Now, did you have
That's my
something
propo-
in
that's all.
contrast or different? That's what it,
no, this is Michelle's.
okay.
Strong support.
Okay. So you're proposing this is an amendment,
Yes.
okay?
Now, do we debate the amendment on
Yeah,
the
we
council?
debate the amendment here. A second, please, Claire. Someone.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay, seconded, okay. Michelle, she's the owner of the specific letter and is asking for this amendment that's shown there.
I think it makes our point. I don't think we need to get real technical in exact which words. I think it's fine. It says what we want to say.
So let's vote on it. This amendment acceptable. Raise of hands for those in favor.
Are we voting for the letter or
Just
the
the
amendment?
Just the
amendment.
amendment.
This amendment, okay, we have that change. Now, does anybody else have any other changes to mention?
I would just like to see, again, I've voiced this with each of the letters, about redesigning it, telling them to change the roof slope. I think that, just remove that whole sentence. I don't see why we need to.
We've discussed it 3 times.
I know, and I've
Kept
been
it in.
opposed it all 3
We
times.
kept it in 3 times because the architect insisted that his architectural integrity required that steep roof pitch. And I have more strength for that now because Lisa was at the CDRC meeting recently and talking to one of the architects. And the typical roof pitch on the coast is 1.5 inches to 12, or at most 3 inches to 12. And the Cypress Point buildings are 8 inches to 12 slope. They're way out of the typical slope of the Midcoast. So I think that that is a reasonable thing to have. But,
So we have that.
if 4 of the people on the council want to take it out, take it out.
Okay, so we have this letter as amendment. Are there any other proposed changes to the letter? Okay,
So I'd like to address Ann's concern about the ability to change the project to 100% affordable housing and then all the...
Dan, at this point, if you want to do it, you need to propose it as an amendment.
Okay, we're having a discussion.
No, I'm trying to move it forward, so do you want to make an amendment to that point?
So I'm not ready to make the amendment. I'm not sure how the best way to include that, and that's why I'm bringing it up. And I'd like to hear think some of the members of the community wanted to continue to talk, and you stifled the community, so.
I think they've had quite a bit of time. Now we're trying to close on this.
Well, this is a very important item.
So, can I propose a straw poll? How many people on the council are interested in discussing 100% versus less than 100%?
I don't understand it.
Well, that's why I want to discuss it.
Okay, well, clarify why you think it's an issue.
I will clarify because.
No,
Oh,
the council.
but I can tell you.
The council.
Well, I yield my time to the community. Can you please?
Thank you. The entire reason I am opposed to it is because when you change to 100% affordable housing, you change the rules.
No, you don't.
You do.
There have been proposed changes like SB 50, but those rules, those laws have not passed.
The governor has already put things into place. He has.
He does
And
not have the power as governor to do that.
There is no reason not to ask to keep it as it is. There is absolutely no reason to greenlight 100% affordable housing. There's absolutely no reason. There's almost no community out there these days putting in 100% affordable housing. Most communities are mixed. Most are. And Mid-Penn is doing a project in Burlingame with another developer at a 40, 60 unit, 40%, 60% market rate. They can do this, and they certainly could do it here.
Okay, I think we've heard your point.
I would appreciate, but I think that when other members said they didn't understand why, it does make a difference. It does, because when you change to 100% affordable housing, it does change the rules. You may say no, but yes, it does.
Not under current law.
It does.
Well, I think that she makes the point, though, that current law, I agree with Dan, it's not there yet, but it's proposed. And by the time this might get approved, then they might be able to weasel out of these views. And that's our concern.
Nobody can predict the future.
Okay. So, Dan, she's now clarified, do you want to propose an amendment?
I'd like to continue the discussion.
No,
the comment from the
straw
community. I'd
poll
like to hear.
said there wasn't support for it of the board.
Can I make a comment?
If it's on this point, you can.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I'm very concerned that what I'm sensing here, and this is a very small community, but there's a huge support organization behind resist density, and I'm at the point now I'm losing trust. I don't understand the process. I mean, I see things happening here, and I hear mixed messages. We can argue, is that right or wrong? I mean, here's a citizen, a resident who says, is the law going to change? Here's a council member who should speak for the community and basically saying that's not true. I'm sitting here, I don't know what to believe. I don't know what to believe. And I think if a letter goes out and it's not written in a clear format, at the end of the day, we as a community, we're going to sit there and we're going to live with it. And if we can't get an EIR because they play a trick on us, we're going to live with it. They're going to haul 600 truckloads out of that property. We don't know if there's any hazardous material left from the Navy usage. We don't know. And this is not a transparent process. This is not a transparent process.
Relative to the letter we're considering, I'm not sure whether you'd say you'd just like to see the whole thing show, because it's gotten to a point where you don't have confidence in it.
Yeah, because you're missing important points.
Well, I think when we come with an exchange like this, the council isn't in a position to say this person is right or that person. So at the most, we can say we could table it and look at it, or just move ahead.
Okay.
But the concern is, what we're talking about was brought forward really with a specific concern about height, which was felt an important point to bring in, offline of the major environmental reviews that are there. We've tried to bring information that we're looking into what's the best course of action. We've looked to bring information in both at the environmental review level as well as the roadways, and certainly with Connected Coast site out there, that's being brought into play as well. So I think that unfortunately the discussion here brought us down to such a minute point that we're confusing ourselves to some extent, because I think what I hear is by not putting in certain language which we can't even agree on, we're going to undercut trust in the letter. So at that point, You know, I think, certainly we're not going to bring this up again after today, because after today, we want to give our attention to the big picture. So really, what we have to decide tonight is whether this letter with a small amendment we can accept or to table it. That's my view of where we're at. So let's just go around one time and let me know whether you still want to, well, we have the amendment which we approved. So we have the amended letter for consideration, and just, you know, give your feedback as to whether you're ready to vote and which way you're leaning.
So now that there was more talk about the concern with the 100% affordable housing.
I think on the small
Can we
points.
do another straw poll?
No.
Since there was more information shared.
Sure, what?
Has anybody changed their opinion?
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's 4. You can get a second for your amendment if you want.
Okay.
Oh, wait,
We're-
waiting for a second?
Well, he hasn't made
He
the
making a
amendment
motion?
yet.
No. Dan?
I'd like to amend that we add in the last sentence as concern has also been expressed about the lack of resources to support the development, particularly water, sewer, and fire. And then as it was amended, and then after that, next to the long sentence, but concern with the changing of the affordable housing ratio.
Can I speak? So this amendment specifies the reduction of units from 148, I believe, I might be a couple off on that, to 71, and the change from partially affordable to 100% affordable. So if we were opposed to the percentage of affordable units, actually it should be a part of this letter, not just like another community concern.
Right.
And if there was an amendment to say it was a community concern, I would vote against it because we've heard from very few in the community on that issue.
What? I didn't.
We've heard very few people in the community speak up on
Let's let Dan get
partial versus
his
whole.
amendment.
Where does it say here that?
Just make your amendment.
Supports, what did you say?
Yeah, so the LCP amendment, one of the main 5 things in the LCP amendment is the density reduction from 271 units of 100% affordable.
Where that, yes.
So I was saying that if we were opposed, in this letter, we're saying that we're opposed to that number, 71. If we were opposed to the fact that they're changing it to 100% affordable, it would be appropriate to address that in the project density section of this letter, not in the introduction.
And the bullet point.
Okay.
If there,
Okay.
you could do either, because that is specific to the amendment.
It's not just another thing that we care about regarding this project, it's part of the LCP amendment.
We are concerned that the change in affordability ratio may cause the bypass of appropriate reviews.
That sounds acceptable to me.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? So, at this point, I'm going to move to consider the letter for vote. Does anybody like to make any comments before we vote?
I am concerned that the community thinks that by sending this letter, because it doesn't address everything, perhaps in the way they would like it to be addressed. I'm sorry that you feel that way. I understand what you're saying. I think I'm coming down on the side of don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. If we aren't able to say something that's at least somewhat on target that they can have in front of them when they consider this amendment, then we're not able to say anything. And I think that that would put us in a worse position than just approving this letter and sending it.
Completely agree. We've considered this letter 3 times now. I wrote the updates today based on what we all agreed on last time. There's some intricacies in terms of the wording, but generally we took straw polls on each of the points, and the majority of the council supported what we're saying. So I really hope that there is still council support for this letter, because I think it's much better to send this letter than to not send it.
Okay. So, anything else? Yeah. So I will support it. But basically I'm supporting it with the view that after this, we will not have discussions of letters that are on minor points, but take full aim at the final comments we'll make on the zoning amendment. And we have 3 or 4 meetings to do that. Michelle?
No, I said what I wanted to say.
Okay, Dave?
I have nothing more to say.
Dan?
No, support the letter.
Okay. All those in favor of the letter? Passes. Dave,
I'm against.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks for the comment on it, but the major show is still to come. Not today, though. Okay, the final item on the main agenda, rezoning of LCP. This is the amendment. Could you go over the letter, Dave?
Yep.
And this is on the amendment request that is not Cypress Point.
For the audience and a reminder to the council members, the agenda items on planning issues do have the county PLN number in them.
Excuse me? Do we have a quiet in the audience? Excuse me? The audience. Thank you.
So,
thanks for coming too.
when there's confusion, refer to the PLN numbers. They're almost always searchable on the MCC site. So this is a follow-on to the presentation we had on the 12th about changing the rules for subdividing properties for publicly owned parcels or potentially publicly owned parcels, and specifically Mid-Penn open space and Post want this so that they can acquire parcels while leaving larger than currently allowed parcels to the existing homeowner when there's a home on it. The state law supports that. The Coastal Act supports it. The county law is in conflict. So the proposal is to amend the county law to be in line with state law, which is actually required by state law. During that discussion, Commissioner Ketchum from the Planning Commission pointed out that the ordinance being amended, the chapters in the zoning ordinance being amended were 2 that we had already wanted to get changed to clarify how height is measured in the RMCZ and PAD, that's agricultural zoning. This is something that would have affected Valamar and potentially will affect other projects on the Midcoast in the future. So we are saying in this letter we support the open space districts in their attempt to get this changed. We would request an additional sentence in each of 2 sections, one for RMCZ and one for PAD. And it's here underlined, highlighted. The additional sentence is, in the Midcoast LCP update project area, building height shall be measured from the lower of natural or finished grade to the topmost point of the building above. And then exactly the same sentence for PAD. And this will go to the county planner, the contract planner who is being paid by Post and open space districts, and the 2 representatives of the open space districts who were here at our last meeting. Seems very straightforward. I'm glad that Lisa Ketchum caught this, and I'm hoping that they will all agree to incorporate this change.
So, any questions by the council?
Would it be appropriate to add the CDRC to the distribution as a copy?
Sure.
Since they have an interest in this?
Sure. Makes perfect sense.
Okay.
So what's driving, the need to have this done now? Because this kind of came up fast, and I haven't had time to really look into it. I have concerns that there's other ramifications to this change that may not be clear. Unexpected.
Sorry.
Are you talking about the amendment itself?
This letter approving the amendment, yes.
Right, well, it was presented to us on the 12th, I think the comments were in support.
So the county has no choice but to make the zoning change that post and open space district required. So we are piggybacking on a change they are making to do something unrelated. So
why are we writing a letter if they have no choice? Why are we writing a letter? Why am I saying that?
I'm trying to understand, are you concerned about the height limit addition we're requesting or the original zoning change? Or both?
The height limit is not the concern.
Okay.
So I mean, what's driving this? Why do we have to approve this? Why are we suggesting to approve it tonight?
We considered it on the 12th, and we were overall supportive of it, but we wanted this.
Well, I said that at that time, I said that we needed to review it a little bit more, and I'm sorry, I have not. I've just had a very busy schedule. I have not been able to give it full attention.
So if you can raise your concerns, I might be able to address them. I don't know.
So I'll ask the question again. What is driving the deadline? Why do we have to do this now?
Because we want to piggyback on the zoning change that's already being made, because in the past, when we've asked for this change, the planning department has said, we don't have the resources to open up the zoning and make changes. So we're piggybacking on an existing change that's already going through the process. And that's the, I wouldn't say it's quite a rush, but that's why it's now. We don't know how fast this will go through.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that it's going to go through really fast. So I think by pushing this is not really the right thing to do. I think it could have a little time for a little bit more personal review into it.
Well, first of all, I missed it. Could somebody make a motion of support for the letter?
I'll make a motion.
A second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. So now we're having discussion. Okay. So I think what you're asking for, Dan, is whether we can table this to another meeting?
Yes, please.
Okay. So a request you can make, and we can vote on that, okay? So all those who would be in favor of tabling this, to bring it up at another meeting? As you, all opposed?
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
When we discussed this previously, the county planner was accepting of our adding our concerns to it with the provision that the planning commission staff be able to study it and incorporate it into their report, and I think that they need time to do that.
Right, which is why we want to give it to them. Okay. Question?
I'm not quite clear. So is this saying that just open space is 28 feet max, or are we saying that?
All RMCZ and PAD zoning. Currently, there are only a few small parcels that are PAD in the Midcoast, and it's unlikely any of them will be built. They already have houses built on them. But there is additional RMCZ, and as I said, if this had happened prior to Valimar, the Valimar houses would have been lower.
So,
and it's not the 28 feet per se that's the issue, it's the how do you measure the 28 feet? So we're proposing that there's a measurement standard that guarantees that it actually is 28 feet and that there's not a loophole that they can really go higher.
And it matches the residential zoning all through the Midcoast.
Even if a piece of property has a PUD from 50 years ago that
This
says...
does not affect PUD.
It's PAD.
This is all project specific.
No, so this is general zoning. PUD is a project-specific zoning. PAD is an agricultural zoning. RMCZ is resource
Open
management. in
space,
the coastal
okay,
zone.
okay. Because I was starting to question that new development over there behind the coastal market. Okay, I understand that, thank you.
So this change will affect a lot of land south of Half Moon Bay.
No, that's not in the Midcoast LCP area.
No, I'm talking about
The original zoning change, yes.
the zoning change.
Yep. Yep. In fact, it is intended mostly to affect the...
So the letter says that the Midcoast Council supports these changes. Okay, so this letter of support potentially has a lot of zoning, impacts to a lot of land, which is south of
It does.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And they covered that thoroughly, we felt.
Thousands of acres.
That's why I really want to look into this, to see if there may be something that is not obvious.
I appreciate that, Dan, but we just voted not to do that.
I'm just reiterating it, Len.
Okay.
Is that okay?
It's okay. So, we're going to vote on... We're going to vote now on accepting the letter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I want to abstain because I don't
Okay,
know
I appreciate
enough,
that.
enough about it.
That's okay. Okay. Council activity. I did not get the list for tasks and priorities to you for this meeting, so I'm still behind there. I had an interesting discussion with Caltrans Maintenance on the power, on full power. And basically, it was when they had the power outages, we were told when the second one was in imminent danger that they had backup coverage. And I didn't understand how. But in speaking to the maintenance crew, basically Caltrans bought in specifically for that threatened failure or stoppage of power, their own units to back up the tunnel. They were big and basically just brought in on that instance and then taken away. And the search for continuing backup power is still an active project by Caltrans. Side note. Okay. Anything else on council activity? Okay. Now, in terms of future agendas, we now have to factor in the revised date for the Cypress Point project. That'll have some impact. The consideration of the Moss Beach corridor was relating directly to the road requirements associated with Cypress Point, as well as the larger considerations there. I'm not sure about that timing. Harbor District, we have the new director there, and we'd like to hear from him, and they're also looking at their RV park. So, basically, we've already moved you're going to consider whether to have, you're going to go to the meeting on Seton on the 4th?
I will either go or I'll talk to Supervisor Campaign.
But it may be coming up. Barbara, but as far as the celebration, you'll have that for the next meeting?
Next meeting.
Okay. And then we'll see where we come out in terms of Cypress. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, everybody.